Hi everyone, this is Brittany from Teach Me ABA, and I'm so excited we're going to be wrapping up Section C of Task List 5 for those of you that are studying for the exam. Now in this blog we're going to go ahead and we're going to be talking about C-11. This is interpreting graphic data. So let's get into it. Now, if you have not gone over and you've read and seen C-10, where we've discussed interpreting data to communicate quantitative relations, you should really go back and reference that first because this is going to give you context onto how to interpret that graphed data. So remember, you need to start with those basics. If you don't have those, it's going to be a little tough for you to follow in this video. If not, let's go ahead and get into it. Since we're talking about ABA, and ABA predominantly uses line graphs, I'm going to be discussing just line graphs and how to interpret those graphs, which is especially important, especially when we're talking about all the data that's going to be presented to caregivers and stakeholders. Now, let's start with visual analysis of graph data, which just means that you're going to be interpreting the graph that you're looking at. Now, the Cooper, Heron, and Heward book states that there are two questions within ABA that we should ask ourselves when interpreting our data. Number one, did behavior change in a meaningful way? And number two, if so, to what extent can that behavior change be attributed to your independent variable? Now, with that said, we're going to focus on common properties of analyzing behavioral data. That is the definition and the examples of variability, level, and trend. So let's get into it. Now, let's talk about variability. This is defined as how often and the extent to which repeated measures of behavior yield different outcomes. So variability will be shown across the x-axis. Now, it's said that more variability across data points demonstrates that the independent variable has not shown sufficient control over the target behavior. So thankfully, we have an example of what high variability looks like. Now, as a reminder, each data point represents a quantifiable measure of behavior during an observation, and it shows the time or the experimental condition when the measurement was conducted. Up next is level. Now, level is defined as the value on the y-axis at which the set of behavior measures converge. A graph may include a mean level line, which also indicates the level in terms of absolute values on the y-axis, which usually means that it looks like a dashed line cutting through the series of data points. Now, what's important to know about the level is that it essentially is demonstrating the stability of your data as it moves across one level to another, as shown in our example. Now, for the graph shown, we're going to see that the high level of data may be interpreted as our baseline data for that particular behavior. So let's say this is the behavior that a clinician wishes to reduce. Let's say it's aggression, while the moderate and low level represent the intervention being implemented, thus showing that there is a reduction in that target behavior. Another aspect of graphs that we need to discuss very quickly are those vertical lines that you might see on a graph. Now, these indicate a condition change line. So basically that shows that there's a change in the independent variable. Typically, this is also discussing the independent variable about when it was either withdrawn or it was introduced. Now, at the top of the graph, you might also see what's called condition labels. These are just labels which indicate experimental conditions across the x-axis, when the independent variable was again changed, when it was withdrawn, when a different independent variable was introduced. Last but not least, we need to discuss trend. Now, trend is defined as the overall direction taken by a data path. Now, this is described in terms of either increasing, decreasing, or zero. Trends tend to indicate the magnitude or the extent of the variability of those data points. So remember, when discussing the data path, we are talking about the level and the trend of behavioral data points as it progresses from the y-axis across the x-axis, or as it moves from baseline across to when you implemented your intervention and so on. Now, the direction of a trend is indicated by a line that goes through the data path that's called the trend line or line of progress. So if the trend is increasing, this means that the behavior of interest is moving up the y-axis. And then if the behavior is increasing along the dimension that it's being measured as well. So when the trend is decreasing, we can then deduce that the behavior of interest is decreasing across the measured dimension as depicted in our example. So we look forward to any questions or comments that you have within the topic of interpreting graph data, as this is a skill that's really tough to master. Your graph data will indicate the effectiveness of your intervention, and it's going to provide a lot of information to those individuals that really want to see this graph data and rely on your knowledge for interpreting those results. So once again, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and list them below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and good luck studying out there.